Hey, shalom, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Hakadosh. Giving double honors to the elders and apostles at Great Millstone who taught me this truth. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect. Peace and salutations to the Akim, the brethren out there on the highways and byways pushing this truth in 100% sincerity. And peace and salutations to the few and sincere sisters who do believe in this gospel. So I want to entitle this lesson, Refrain from Being Hasty, right? And going into refraining from being hasty, specifically in times of trouble, in times of, being lowly, in times of, where things are not just going the best for you. And, you're kind of at a down spell, so to speak, right? Well, we go through these things for reasons. We go through these things for chastisement. We go through these things for to build us up in the spirit, to build us up in the faith, and we also go through these things as just our punishment here in Babylon the Great for the sins that we've committed, in this life, in our past lives. Um, because the scriptures say we all have fallen short of the glory of the Lord. So, we do have to serve a punishment in this captivity. We do have to serve a judgment here in Babylon the Great. So that is what we are to do, right? And we have to serve this judgment. Um, we got to take the judgment. Basically, I guess what I want to say, because I can't think of the words to say, but we got to take it on the chin, right? You got the term taking it on the chin, because certain things you just can't really do anything about, right? And us in this truth, going through the things that we go through, is nothing we can really do about it, because this is just what's a part of being in the truth. This is just what's a part, comes with the territory, right? So it's best that we take these things cheerfully, as the scriptures say, right? Let me get a couple of scriptures. This is Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 11. It says, "My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth, even as a father, the son in whom he delighteth." Right? So it's a good thing to be chastened by the Lord. It's a good thing that we go through these hardships, right? In this truth, knowing the truth, knowing the full understanding and wisdom of the scriptures. It is a good thing that we go through certain hardships, because that's a sign that the Lord is dealing with us as his children, as his sons, you know. So we're actually supposed to be glad at that. We're supposed to be happy at those things, because, if everything was just all good for us, and everything was just, great, and we had no problems and no worries in the world, we would, and that would actually be something to be worried about, right? Because what that could be is the Lord fattening you up for a great fall, right? For a great destruction. Kind of like the Lord is fattening up these Edomites, and has been fattening up these Edomites for centuries, centuries on end, right? Primarily with the rulership and the power of, or the kingdom here in Babylon the Great. Right? The Lord has been fattening up this devil for what? For a great fall, a great destruction, right? As the saying in the world goes, the bigger they come, the bigger they fall. Or the bigger they come, the harder they fall. Slakia. But that's what's going on in this truth. Well, that's what's going on in this world, right? As the book of Amos, chapter 3 and verse 6 says, you know, to all the families of Israel, you only have unknown. Therefore, I will punish you for all your iniquities, right? Because the Lord is only dealing with the Israelites. The Lord is only dealing with the nation of Yasha Allah, right? So the Lord punishes the nation of Israel, the nation of Yasha Allah, when we go off. When we go off, when we sin, when we go against the Lord, when we stray away from the Lord punishes us because he deals with us as his children, right? Primarily as a parent, the main concern for you now, I know back in the day, parents would chasten other parents' children because they had that understanding and there was a sense of more of a sense of community than it was today, right? But primarily, your main concern is your own children, right? And, let the other parents really worry about their kids. Now, and of course, again, in the village situation, you know, you all have an understanding, right? But primarily, your main concern is your own children. So when it comes to the Heavenly Father, his main concern is his children. And who are his children? The Israelites, right? So when we go through things, just understand that it's a part of the chastening, it's a part of the journey. It's a part of being in this truth. You got to go through things, right? And you got to think about that also. You got to be conscious and aware of that what I may be going through right now, I know what it's for. I know why it's here. And you even come on a bigger level, or you're coming on to a greater level in this truth, where when you know and understand the chastening of the Lord, and you can kind of see how you can come out of it, right? You can kind of see the growth that can come from this chastening right down the line whenever you get through it. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, let's say, you're on a job and you have a manager or, a particular coworker who they may not be doing something against company policy, but they're a nuisance to you. They're a pest. They may be, you know, it may be certain things that they do to affect your work, affect that could affect how you feel and, what I'm saying, on the job and things like that, right? And, at that point, you have a choice. You have a decision to make. What you can do, you can crash out, you can go off, you can cuss everybody out, be a nigga, right? That's one thing. And you may even be tempted to do that. The flesh may want to do that, right? But the spirit, right? The spirit will tell you, look, endure it because this is what the Lord has us going through. And this is how you can come out. This is the growth that you can have by dealing with a particular situation with wisdom, right? Because also we got to realize too, chastening also gives us wisdom. It also builds wisdom and it builds us up in the spirit. Because when we have that wisdom and we understand that okay, we got to deal certain ways, and the way our flesh may want to deal with something, typically that's not going to be the best. That's not going to be the best for for a favorable outcome, right? Because you can crash out and then lose your job. And some jobs report these things. They have public sites and forums and things like that where they report certain things on a like, for example, for a truck driver, right? I'm a truck driver, right? they have this thing called a DAC report. And, if you have any negative marks at a particular company, right? Let's say you did something and, like, so let's say, for example, you quit a trucking company, but then you just leave their truck at a truck stop or something like that, right? Well, they will mark on your DAC report that you abandoned their truck. And if you have that on your report, a lot of companies are not going to want to hire you because it looks as if you're not the type of person to take care of their assets, right? And that's the same thing with this truth. And I'm going a little bit off topic, but the Lord marks us for our performance and how we behave too. The Lord marks us for how we do certain things while we're in this truth. You know what I'm saying? The Lord definitely does mark us, right? If you go off on a doctrine, if you're not being brotherly, if you're being a pest and nuisance to brothers, like purposely, you know what I'm saying? You're trying to, sow discord between brethren, things like that, right? So, it's good to deal with things with wisdom. So not only you can have a favorable outcome, but you can also have a good report. You have a good report with the men in this truth, with the brethren, with the brotherhood, and you have a good report in this world as well, right? So let's go here to the book of Sirach, chapter 2, and I'm gonna start at verse 1. It says, "My son, if thou come to serve the Lord, prepare thy soul for temptation, set thy heart aright, and constantly endure, and make not haste in time of trouble," right? So certain things that you gotta go through, certain things you gotta endure, and you also have to learn to deal with. Everything ain't gonna just be I just feel a certain type of way, and you know, I don't know what to do, and or not I don't know what to do. You just feel something, and then after a day or two, it kind of goes away, right? Certain things brothers are going to have to endure with, right? When I first came into this truth, I didn't have a lot of money. I don't have a lot of money now, but I didn't have what I felt was a steady job. You know what I mean? I didn't have, real steady income. And actually, when I first came into the truth, I didn't have any income, right? But I still had bills to pay, and I still had other responsibilities and things like that that I had to take care of. But it took patience, right? It took patience, right? And I remember not having a car too. And certain cities like St. Louis is real convenient to have a car because one, our public transportation is ass. That's number one. And it's like if you're in the city, you can walk certain places, but things are more spread out, right? And it's just more convenient to have a vehicle, right? And I remember myself trying to get a vehicle, and I would go to different dealerships, and I would try and do certain things, and they would be like, "Well, yeah, you got to put this much money down, and you got to do this, you got to do that," and I just didn't have it at the time, and I wasn't able to do it, so I had to endure for a time. I think about maybe almost a year without a vehicle. You know what I'm saying? Which was not normal for me because ever since I was like 17, I had a car, right? And I had to go through that a little bit this year, save up a little bit of money, because of the way. And I'm that's another story. But in this truth, a lot of times, man, you're gonna have to go it out. You're gonna be placed in uncomfortable situations. And these uncomfortable situations, you're going to have to endure it for a time, and you're gonna have to see it through. You're gonna have to see it through to the other side, right? But through that, you do what? You build up strength, you build up in the spirit, you build up faith. Now I got that scripture coming up too. But let's finish out this Sirach chapter 2. It says, Cleave unto him and depart not away, that thou mayest be increased at thy last end. Because, you know, all these hard times are not going to last forever. This captivity ain't going to last forever, right? There's an end to this captivity where we're going to be increased, where the elect, starting with the elect of the nation of Israel, we're going to receive a great increase. We're going to receive a great reward for serving, in this truth, for being faithful to Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, for enduring trials and tribulations and the things that we got to go through on this side. We're going to receive a reward for that, right? And the Lord is well pleased with us to see us go through these things with faith, right? Verse 5, it says, For gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. Believe in him, and he will help thee. Order thy way aright, and trust in him. Ye that fear the Lord, wait for his mercy, and go not aside, lest ye fall, right? So we gotta wait. It's a part of this truth is playing a waiting game, you know, because if the Lord doesn't want you to do something or doesn't want something for you, trust me, you're not gonna get it. Like for a long period of time when I first came into the truth and I didn't have a car, and all of my efforts of me trying to get a car never worked out because the Lord didn't want me to have one at that time. Right? All I was doing, man, I was taking the bus to work, you know what I'm saying, and taking the bus back home. Might walk to the convenience store, might walk to the gas station down the street, get something to eat, get some groceries or something like that. Come home, cook food, and read. Come home, cook, eat, read, and sleep. That's all I was doing when I first came into this truth. You know what I'm saying? It was work, eat, and sleep. But that was good for me because, I learned a lot. I was I had to be built up in the truth. I learned a lot. So like this truck in front of me is rocking back and forth. So you know what I'm saying? Some things going on in there, right? But but Salakia. And during those things, I was rewarded. You know, I eventually came out and was able to get a car. You know, and even then, I had a lot of financial struggles still. At the time, I was dealing with a non-ideal woman for me to deal with at the time, and I was going through hell with that, and I had financial issues. But eventually, I got out of that relationship and found better, and I've come into a career where I can pay my bills consistently, right? So call Allah Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, right? But those are the things that happen when you endure through faith, right? You can't, because some people who come into this truth and they see that they got to endure some type of hardship, they like, this ain't for me. And they jump right back into the world, not understanding that, yo, if you endure it, if you go through this and you come out on the other end, you know, it will be better. It will get better for you. but you got to endure it. You got to endure with faith, right? Verse 8, it says, Ye that fear the Lord, believe him, and your reward shall not fail. Ye that fear the Lord, hope for good and for everlasting joy and mercy. Look at the generations of old and see, did ever any trust in the Lord and was confounded, or did any abide in his fear and was forsaken? Or whom did he ever despise that called upon him? For the Lord is full of compassion and mercy, long suffering, and very pitiful, and forgiveth sins and saveth in time of affliction, right? So the Lord is going to, save it. The Lord saves us in times of affliction. The Lord looks out for us, right? We're coming into Jacob's trouble here. But the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah is going to look out for the elect. We're going to be in situations where that are, we may look at as impossible to get out of. You know, Esau and, martial law troops might be to your right, and you got, these heathen Edomite militia groups might be to your left. Wicked ass Jake might be in the behind you. You know what I'm saying? And you don't know how you finna get out of this situation, right? And the Lord just do some type of miracle and transport you somewhere, teleport you somewhere, or you know what I'm saying? Lightning strike and everybody just drop dead around you. You never know, man. The Lord could save us out of some what we deem to be impossible situations. But that's why we gotta have faith, and that's why we gotta believe, because Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai is capable of delivering us out of anything. But what does it say? Let's keep going, actually. Verse 12, it says, Woe be the fearful hearts and faint hands and the sinner that goeth two ways, right? You in this truth, like Alazar. You in this truth, but you in the world. You got one foot in the truth, but you got one foot in the world. You don't really believe that the Lord is coming back anytime soon. You enjoying the you're enjoying what this world has to offer. You know what I'm saying? This is why a nigga like that is in the situation he in, denouncing the Hebrew Israelite, what he calls a movement, but basically he's denouncing the truth, right? Disassociating himself with the Hebrew Israelites, you know. But you used to be this, high chief priest, you know what I'm saying? Super righteous, never sin, right? But then them things came out about you and your run is over, right? Verse 13, it says, Woe unto him that is faint hearted, for he believeth not, therefore shall he not be defended. Woe unto you that have lost patience, and what will ye do when the Lord shall visit you? They that fear the Lord will not disobey his word, and they that love him will keep his ways. They that fear the Lord will seek that which is pleasing unto him, and they that love him shall be filled with the law. They that fear the Lord will prepare their hearts and humble their souls in his sight, saying, We will fall into the hands of the Lord, and not into the hands of men, for as his majesty is, so is his mercy, right? So we got to continue to have that fear of the Lord. We got to continue to fear Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. Because with the fear of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai comes the faith of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai and wisdom. And when you continue to be patient, right? The scripture said, don't lose, woe be unto them that lose patience, right? You lost patience and you trying to make haste. And, you know, you ain't trusting that the Lord is going to make the situation better. So you try and take it into your own hands, and then you end up fucked up in the end, right? You end up messed up in the end. And now, you getting punished and judged for something that you could have just easily just been patient for, just waited. It's the book of Psalm, chapter 37 and verse 7. It says, Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not thyself because of him who prospereth in his way, because of the man who bringeth the wicked devices to pass. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not thyself in any wise to do evil, right? And that's why you have to do patience. That's why you have to be faithful. You have to wait patiently for Yahweh about Yahweh Shai. Because if you try and take something in your own hands, being in haste, you could do something that is evil in the eyes of the Lord. You could do something that is unfaithful in the eyes of the Lord, right? You could go off easy. That's why the Lord says we need to have patience, right? We need to just wait. And you got people in the world who will say, you waiting on somebody that ain't here, that ain't gonna never come, and all of this. Well, you don't believe he'll ever come. You don't believe that the Lord and his salvation is possible. You may not believe that, right? But we do. And we've seen how the Lord can come through for us, some in small ways, some in major ways. And we believe that the Lord is going to come for us in a major way when there's tribulation. See, the same person who says that, if you ask him what he's going to do if the lights go out and people start rioting in the streets and there's an insurrection among men, you ask them what they're going to do, they're going to give you a carnal answer. Well, I got all these guns and I got bullets, and I'm gonna go take shit, and I'm gonna be the dog out here. I'm gonna be the motherfucking, I'm gonna be the lion in the concrete jungle, and I'm gonna go out here and I'm gonna take what I want from all you niggas. If you got it and I want it, I'm taking it, and I don't give a, you know what I'm saying? Gonna give a carnal answer for you, right? And gonna get fucked up, right? Because all you carnal people, some of you, you may seem to be winning in that day, but ultimately you're not gonna win. Like that dude Nick Irvin. If you see clips of him, the dude who was a sniper in the military, he even said it. He even said, you know, in that day I'm gonna play by my own rules. If you got something I want, I might have been your friend yesterday, but if you got something I want, sorry for you, I'm not your friend today. I'm gonna take it from you, right? And that's a mindset that's gonna get you either fucked up in Jacob's trouble or it's gonna get you nuked. You're gonna eat a missile. But either way, you're not gonna make it with that mindset. You're not gonna make it having that spirit on you, right? Because what? Our weapons of warfare are spiritual, not carnal, right? We don't go about this thing in a carnal manner. The Lord is going to fight for us. The Lord is going to protect us. The Lord is going to deliver us out of trouble, out of tribulation, out of the hand of the wicked. You know what I'm saying? Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai has that in store for those who have faith in him, those who trust in him, those who truly believe in him. I'm gonna just get this James. Five, seven, slide. The book of James, chapter 5, and verse 7, it says, Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and have long patience for it until he receive the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh, right? Being a truck driver, I see a lot of farmland, right? And one thing that I do, I kind of do this to, keep from being bored on the road, but it's interesting to me too, is I like to, in my mind, kind of document the growth of the crops that I see, right? So like in April, and I try and guess what they may be, So like in April, I think April is planting season. So that's when they started planting the seeds. They started getting the ground ready and everything. Like late March, early April, they start getting the ground ready and everything. And then they start planting seeds. And about late April, early May, you start to see, the crops sprouting up out the ground. And then May comes, they start getting taller, and June goes, they start getting taller and taller. Now, like they're almost ready for harvest. I think in around probably August, early September, they'll be ready for harvest. But I see, but I see that takes patience, right? And I see that, because what I used to think is, okay, all this shit just grow in 1 month. All this shit just grow in like 1 or 2 months, and boom, right? You got crops, then they plant some more, and in another 2 months, and boom, you done had two harvests. And I see it's not like that, right? I see it's, you know, in one big ass field, they plant all of their crops, whether it be corn or fruit or tomatoes or whatever. The corn is easy to recognize. I can't recognize the other stuff what they are, but you know, seeing those things, I see is just one one is going to be one harvest, just one big harvest, right? One big harvest that is going to serve, the entire country, really, entire country of Babylon the Great, right? But that takes patience. It takes patience to farm, farm and grow crops and you got to tend to it too. You got to tend to those things, just like we got to tend to this truth and faith, right? And that takes patience. That takes diligence. It takes faith, knowing that if I do the right things, that in the end I will receive a reward. I'll receive a harvest. You know. So yeah, remain faithful. Don't move too quickly. When you go through hard times and when you go through things, don't move in haste, but pray and be patient and wait for the Lord, right? Now you may try and do things, you may try and do certain particular things, but if you see that they're not working out or they're not going the way that you want them to go, well, that's a sign from the Lord right there that hey, it's not time for that. It's not time for that particular thing. Just wait. Just wait for something for what I give you, right? So kind. Lord willing, this video lesson was edifying, giving all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Chakodash. And until